Hey everyone, my name's American Noodle, and today I'm going to be talking about My Friend Pedro. My Friend Pedro is an indie game that was released on June 20th for PC and Nintendo Switch, and December 5th for Xbox One. It was developed by Dead Toast Entertainment and published by Devolver Digital. The game was met with consumer and critical praise. I personally loved the game and enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. It was actually one of my favorite games that I played in 2019. Now I know that's not saying a lot, considering most people thought 2019 was a bad year for video games, whether you agree with that viewpoint or not. I was originally put off by the game due to the whole, banana aspect of it, and I eventually came to really enjoy that part of the game, and when I saw the gameplay of My Friend Pedro, I was immediately enthralled and didn't even care about the banana part. That, kids, is why you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Anyway, I played through the game and thoroughly enjoyed the incredible gameplay. It never got stale as it would always introduce new mechanics and build off the old ones. After finishing the game, I couldn't help but think that I wanted more indie games like it. And I'm not exactly talking about the gameplay style, even though I do love it. I'm also not saying it's my favorite indie game of all time because, well, it's not. I'm saying this because of all the indie game trends that My Friend Pedro breaks away from. Allow me to explain. I've always felt that one of the best parts of indie games is that they were games AAA companies would never make. And My Friend Pedro definitely falls into this category. I mean, the game is based on an old Flash game, if you didn't know, named MFP My Friend Pedro, which I do encourage you to check out after you've played the new one. Anyway, there is a problem with this mindset of making games that AAA companies wouldn't. And that's, most indie games fall under only a few genres, because they are the genres not typically being made by AAA companies. I watch a lot of best new indie games videos, and here's what I've noticed. Most indie games that get a lot of traction are either roguelikes or Metroidvanias. Now there's nothing wrong with these two genres, it's just that they are currently oversaturated in the indie game market, and when there's so many in each genre, they just don't stand out amongst the best of the best like Ori, Hollow Knight, and Enter the Gungeon. The other problem is that these two genres, a lot of people don't like them. Like personally, I'm not a huge fan of roguelikes. If you love them, that's great. They just typically aren't my cup of tea. Although there have definitely been some that I've really enjoyed. I know a lot of other people feel this way as well, because they can find it extremely frustrating having to start over a stage so often. With Metroidvanias, a lot of people don't enjoy all the backtracking and constantly having to wait to go places. So that's why a lot of people don't enjoy those two genres. But My Friend Pedro isn't either of these two genres. It's something practically entirely new on the indie game market. For the Steam Awards, it actually won Most Innovative Gameplay, and rightfully so in my opinion. But this shows that clearly a lot of other people feel this way. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any indie roguelikes or Metroidvanias. It's just that I love seeing indie games do more new and unique things like My Friend Pedro, and want to see more new genres in indie games because that's what will end up pushing the market forward. Another trend that indie games often tend to follow is that they feed off nostalgia. They typically do this in two ways. The first way they do this is by trying to emulate popular older games. While in the past I've enjoyed many of these games that do this, there's a major problem that can and does often occur. That being, these developers will get so caught up in emulating the old game, their own game will end up being too similar to its inspiration, so much so that practically every review will compare the two games. Look at Wargroove for example. I read so many reviews comparing it to Advance Wars, many just calling it a reskinned Advance Wars, and that's not what you should want as a developer. It's honestly lazy. Look at one of Chucklefish's other games, Stardew Valley, clearly inspired by games like Harvest Moon, but different enough to stand on its own. So you can have a game be inspired by another game, but still have enough original stuff to make it feel like its own game. So I'm not saying you can't be inspired by another game. But My Friend Pedro doesn't try to emulate an older popular game at all. You could argue that it is emulating the Flash game it was based off of, but that game wasn't super popular and isn't very old and was quite an unpolished game. My Friend Pedro is more of what that game would have been had it had the proper funding. This allows My Friend Pedro to stand out on the indie market. The other way indie games try to feed off nostalgia is through their art style, and by art style I mean graphics being more pixelated. I'm pretty sure my first exposure to indie games was watching a Shovel Knight playthrough. I remember being blown away by the art, and I still do love it. But now almost all indie games do this, which causes a lot of them to just kind of blend together. Look, I understand making a less pixelated game like My Friend Pedro is more difficult than making a more pixelated game. I'm just saying that if it can be done by the developers, I would like to see it more, because it seems like indie games following this formula is in part because they see that it works, so they think it's less risky. Indie games used to be all about taking risks, and going in new directions. My Friend Pedro shows me that developers are still willing to do this. Another commonality in many indie games that My Friend Pedro breaks away from is that indie games are usually difficult. This seems to be especially common with the ones that get really popular, like Hollow Knight Celeste and Hotline Miami. But I feel that indie game developers have forgotten that there are ways to make a game difficult, other than making you die a lot and or harshly punishing you when you do die. How My Friend Pedro does difficulty is the game itself isn't difficult to beat, but there are different difficulty settings, and the main difficult part about the game will be trying to get higher rankings on levels, which are based on your performance in the level. This can take many tries and can require you to memorize the level. Now this may sound tedious, but it's actually really fun and is super satisfying when you finally get that beautiful S rating. If that's what you're striving for, of course. If this doesn't sound like your cup of tea, you can still have an absolute blast with the game without worrying about ratings. I didn't think I would try to get higher ratings, but I did so I could play the game more and ended up really enjoying it. Now rating your performance is nothing new in games. My Friend Pedro just executes it flawlessly, and is a nice way to offer a decent challenge without making just beating the game extremely difficult, like popular indie games often do, because a lot of people don't like when games are really difficult like that. Another thing My Friend Pedro does that breaks the trends of most indie games is that it appeals to nearly everyone. Indie games are known for often being quite niche. The kid that practically only plays Call of Duty likely isn't going to want to play a game like Shovel Knight. I think they would be much more likely to play My Friend Pedro. And the main reason I think this is because of the whole concept of pulling off really cool tricks, as a lot of first and third person shooter fans really enjoy pulling off trick shots. The next reason that I believe it appeals to nearly everyone may sound really simple and almost stupid, but My Friend Pedro also involves guns, which is something a lot more people are used to and know they enjoy in video games, making them more likely to play My Friend Pedro. Another thing that makes it appeal to everyone is the graphics being less pixelated, as it is what more people are used to and have come to enjoy. These aspects and more make it appeal to nearly everyone, which is, like I said, something most indie games don't do, and I love that it does. To conclude, I could list so many more ways that My Friend Pedro breaks away from indie game trends, but that would be way too long of a video. I just hope that indie developers look at what My Friend Pedro did and see how it succeeded, so they realize they too can break away from the indie game trends, because I want more games like My Friend Pedro. Thanks for watching my video essay. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting down below. It would also mean a lot to me if you shared the video with your friends. I'll be releasing more video essays soon, so I'll see you in the next one. Bye!